in my own journey, I had that late teenage rebellious season, and used to have long hair and was a singer in a rock band in California and all that kind of stuff. And then, God gets a hold of your heart, and you go through those things. And I realized, for me, it was always all or nothing. It was always full blast, one direction or the other. And I realized, you know what? Life is short. I need to make some adjustments here. So I quit all of that and went to Bible college, and eventually became a pastor. And I served for, I don't know, 25 years or something, different places in Canada. And then there was a disturbance in the force, and I went back to university and did an undergraduate degree in philosophy and literature. And then in my last year, my brilliant, eccentric, agnostic, sort of atheist professor called me to his office, and he says, Brent, you're a fabulous student and you're a great writer, but your writing really comes alive when you write about theology. We had been studying 17th century literature, and some of the huge Samuel Johnson, who created the first dictionary, he was a Christian, and the 17th century had these significant people who were a big part of history, who were also believers. And so I was able to write and introduce Professor Miller to these. He says, but when you write about theology, your writing really comes alive. I think you need to do graduate studies in theology. And it was one of those sort of stop the world moments. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, my atheist, eccentric professor is telling me I should study theology at graduate school? Okay, God, I get it. That's you. I did, and I went to McGill in Montreal and then Concordia. But anyway, all just to say, that's a really long introduction to a very simple point. After serving as a pastor for all those years, when I first went back to university and started studying again, when it came time to write, and Teresa, you probably can relate to this, time to write your first paper, maybe you'd study a novella or a short story or a full-on novel, whatever, and you're to write an essay on what spoke to you, on what you think this is about, What do you think you try to do? Eager and keen. You want to unpack the world's understanding of this whole thing. And my professors had to keep telling me, look, just pick one point. Support it with 3 references, and then conclude proving that one point. And so I had flashbacks of that experience, because here we have this very, very interesting topic on the Transfiguration. My God, do you know how much stuff we could talk about? This is just wow stuff. But Julie said, honey, you've been preaching a lot, and there's been a lot of funerals. Maybe it would be good just to have a short sermon today. People are going to get tired of hearing your voice. So I want to make a simple point about the Transfiguration. I hope I can keep it on point today, because it's so tempting. There's so much here we could talk about. So the sermon title is Living the Transformed Life. And this word transformation, where does it come from? It comes from a Greek word, metamorphosis. So we know the word metamorphosis in science and in biology. We link that usually to what? To To what? A butterfly, yes. So, and it is remarkable, is it not? This worm thing that crawls around on the ground. And think of its perspective. Well, I don't know. We could all get on our bellies and start crawling. And how would the way we see even the church right here, right now, would our perspective not change of what we saw to be reality? And then we all just slithered out on our bellies out the door and off to. So this worm thing that crawls around on the ground, all of a sudden goes into this strange process. And this is interesting. I think God is so brilliant in the way he uses nature to teach us. Eventually, what is this worm thing? It crawls up into a tree or a branch or a place, and what does it start to do? It starts to wrap itself in its own casket, its own tomb. Is this not a picture of the silliness of how we endeavor to make ourselves great and satisfy, and all we do is weave our own tombs? Wow, brilliant picture. And then, after this chrysalis period where we've been talking a lot about the true self versus the false self, after this chrysalis gestation, you know what happens to that worm inside its tomb? It starts to turn to this goo. Everything it thought it was comes to an end. And then this miraculous thing happens. The tomb begins to crack open. And slowly, not instantly, slowly, this new creature starts moving these new appendages and starts breaking away this tomb. And you know what? This one lady saw this happening in her backyard, and she thought, oh, that poor thing, this is taking so long. I think I'm going to help it. And she got some tweezers and began to help pull away the chrysalis, the cocoon. And the butterfly fell out on the ground and died. You know why? It needed the struggle to grow the muscles for the wings to support the body. Transfiguration comes from a compound Greek word, metamorphosis. Meta means another. Like Aristotle's metaphysics. Metamorphosis, meta, another, morpho, what do you think that might mean? Form. Another form. Another form. Another form. Guess what word is used in our text in the gospel? And Jesus went up on the mountain with Peter, James, and John, and he was transformed, metamorphosed before them. This is Transfiguration Sunday. Why does it matter to us? The divine reality of who Christ truly was manifested in this human shell that Jesus walked the earth in a way that they recognized the presence of God in human form. They recognized the presence of God in human form. Now, remember last week, Jesus turns to his followers, and what does he say? You are the light of the world. You are the light of the world. The light of God is in you. Let it out so that others can see the glory of God's presence in you. But just like that caterpillar has to work its own way in its new form out of its chrysalis over time, it doesn't happen overnight. We're on a journey. And the journey, the purpose of following Christ and practicing the way he lived is that we too might be metamorphized. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Now listen. This is Paul writing to the Corinthians. But we all, with an unveiled face, without the cocoon, we all, with an unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are being metamorphized into the same image from glory to glory, just as by the Spirit of the Lord. Now that's a hard verse to understand unless you get one key, the mirror. What is the mirror in this verse? But we all with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord. What is the mirror? The mirror is your heart. It's my heart. And where my heart is pointed is going to behold and emanate what it beholds. Did you follow? Kind of? Okay. So let's say that this is a mirror. What's going to show up in that mirror? A Kleenex box, right? What's going to show up in the mirror? A fist. What's going to show up in the mirror? So our hearts, our souls are a mirror. And we all, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, the glory of the Lord, the presence, the manifestation of God, his Spirit, we all, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are being transformed. We're being transfigured from glory to glory. But what happens? Wherever I go, what you behold holds you. So we're all going to leave today. Where are you going to go? Honey, have you seen this? I'm called. Got it, Larry? Okay, good. This week, Rich was in my office, and we were talking. And as You know, the shocking difficulty that Rich and Norma have had to navigate. And Rich said something really profound. He said, you know, those what ifs are really poison, aren't they? What if Mark wasn't so reticent to go to the doctor? What if they would? What if? 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 Really, really interesting. All three synoptic gospels record this event of Jesus' transfiguration. I'm going to bring it to a close. In Luke's gospel, he tells us, and Moses and Elijah appeared to him discussing his decease, which he would accomplish in Jerusalem. Interesting language, isn't it? Discussing his decease, which he would accomplish in Jerusalem. You see, this moment of transfiguration on the mountain was a turning point for Jesus. When he came down from the mountain, guess where he was going? To Jerusalem. And why was he going to Jerusalem? To be crucified. To die. And there he is, and Moses, who represents the law, who went up on Mount Sinai that we read this morning, and Elijah, who represents all the prophets, the two greats representing the law and the prophets, show up and discuss with Jesus, encouraging him about going to Jerusalem to accomplish what needed to be done. And do you remember when Jesus actually gets to the garden? Do you remember? He is overwhelmed with the reality. It's finally here. And he begins to actually emit blood through his pores. It's an actual physical medical condition that when you're under extreme stress and anxiety, your pores will begin to excrete blood from your body. And this is what happens to Jesus. And you remember what he cries out? My God, if there's any other way, please let this cup pass for me. And he prays, and he's quiet. And then he says, nevertheless, not my will be done, but yours be done. You see, this is the shifting of metamorphosis. This is how change happens. Change doesn't happen through accomplishment. Change happens through surrender. And I wonder, in the midst of all that turmoil, I wonder if he didn't think back to the Mount of Transfiguration and to that moment with Moses and Elijah, who were discussing with him what he needed to accomplish when he came down from the mountain. Transfiguration isn't easy, and there's a cost involved. And we don't like to give up our wills, do we? What keeps us from transfiguration? Demanding our way, demanding to understand, demanding to be in control. We see in Jesus this beautiful, perfect picture of what it takes for transfiguration to happen. It takes surrender, surrender, Surrender. A verse that Barb and I continuously encourage each other with, my parents had me memorize when I was 3 years old. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your, and do not lean on your own understanding, leaning on our own understanding, demanding an explanation, wanting to be in control. Guess what? It kills transfiguration. And it stops the light of Christ in us from actually being emitted and flowing and touching other people with the presence of God. We, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are being transformed, transfigured from glory to glory, even as by the Spirit of God. I've told this story before, but it's a continuous encouragement to me. And so I want to bring the sermon to a close. There's some really great quotes in here. Transformation is not something you can do. Transformation is something that's done to you. You can't accomplish and achieve transformation. It has to be done to you. But you have a part in participating, and your part in participating is to surrender as Jesus did and say, okay, I can let go of all the what ifs. Do you know what? That's a hell waiting to trap me. What if? I can let go. I can release needing to have my way and being in control. I can surrender to that. And when I do, I make space for the experience of the presence of God. And as I surrender and make space for the presence of God, guess what happens to me? I'm transformed. I can't take any credit for it. All I did is give in to love. Well, look at me. All I did is surrender to love, and usually because my options are running out fast and I don't know what else to do. I can't even take credit for that. The grace of God. But the positive side of what that can feel like and be like, I've told this story, and I'll close with this. One time I was in British Columbia pastoring 2 churches. They were about 3 hours apart, and I would stop in between to get gas and coffee, and driving back, and I was stopped at the pump, and there was a convenience store, and down on the curb of the convenience store was this little boy about 10, 11 years old, and he's just sobbing, and I quickly finished my gas, and I go over there, and I go, hey, what's going on? What's wrong? She was right. My mom was right. I'm such a loser. She gave me $20 to come get groceries. She said I probably wouldn't make it back. I'd lose it. And I did. I don't usually carry cash. I had a $20 bill in my pocket. Honestly. Coincidence? I said, hey, it's okay. And I reached in my pocket, and I gave him that $20 bill, and his crying stopped. And he looked up at me, and he said, who are you? And I had one of those holy moments where I knew the question was more for me than it was for him. And God was waking me up to be the presence of God's mercy and God's love. And that little boy saw in me the glory of the Lord. I never learned his name. He never learned mine. Never saw him again. Don't know what happened. But our souls touched in that holy moment. And we shaped each other's lives. We were transfigured by the presence of God. So, brothers and sisters, practice what you behold in your mirror. Because what you behold holds you.